Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and our next guest is Thom Shanker. He is a longtime Pentagon correspondent and editor at the New York Times, and he's the co-author of the book Age of Danger: Keeping America Safe in an Era of New Superpowers, New Weapons, and New Threats. So, Thom, welcome to the program.
Andy, it's always an honor to join you. Thank you.
So I want to talk to you today because you were one of the first people I know who really focused on the military utility of drone technology. And in your book, you have a whole chapter on how drones will change the battlefield. But let's start here at home. We've got these drones. People have been seeing them over New Jersey and other states, including now Texas. And what I'm wondering is, even if these drones are not dangerous, have we learned anything about our own vulnerabilities to this sort of threat because of this experience?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy, and thank you for that. The FAA, I checked the stats before I came on with you. The FAA has registered 1 million drones in the United States. And those are just the people who bother to register. So if you do the math, they're going to be in the sky just about everywhere all the time. And what we're learning now is the ubiquitousness of these drones. And, it doesn't appear that all the recent sightings that any of them come from foreign intelligence services. They're not outer space aliens coming to invade us. They're just people putting drones up in the air. And there is kind of this cycle where once the drone sightings are reported, people start looking up. And now they're seeing small planes, commercial aviation. One person even reported to the FAA turned out to be Venus or Jupiter, right? So, what we are entering an era where drones are going to be in the skies like taxis on the streets of big cities.
Right. And let's talk about the military aspect of this, though, in this regard. I mean, the fact that the government has assured us that these drones are not threatening and that sort of stuff. It doesn't, but they haven't really given us a real explanation for any of it. But is there a scenario where drones could be a threat, and is that worth taking seriously?
Oh,
And I'm not talking about the battlefield. I'm talking just sort of domestic terrorism, I guess.
right. That's what my co-author Andy Hone and I really look at, which is the rise of the drones as a threat here on U.S. territory. We've already seen it. There was about, 5, 6 years ago, some drunk who lived near the White House was flying his gyrocopter and he lost, line of sight control behind a building. Thing landed on the White House lawn. It wasn't
Wow.
intercepted as it wasn't shot. And that was just a real nightmare for the Secret Service. Baseball games have been halted for drones. So thus far, it's only been hobbyists and chuckleheads. But it's easy to imagine a scenario in which a terrorist, domestic or foreign, disrupts a Super Bowl, a World Series, or even just a state fair by flying a drone over. Think about the emotional impact if a drone passed over a college football game and just dropped, baking soda, right?
Mhm.
Not even anthrax. Think about the terror that would be caused, and then think through if it really was a malign actor. And that's just on the civilian side. There have been sightings of drones over military bases. And the problem is the technology, the tracking's not in place to defend us thoroughly.
Yeah. You know, you and I went to school together 100 years ago. We went to a little place called the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, where we studied defense strategy and a bunch of other stuff. But, so I'm always interested in talking to you about strategy. And it seems to me, and you've written about this, the drones, one of the things that drones do in the battlefield is it changes the cost balance of offense and defense. That is, what you want is always for the other side to have to use expensive weapons to counter your inexpensive targets. So that's sort of, the economics of war, if you will. And in the case of drones, what you want is to force the opposition to use high-cost missiles, for example, to shoot down cheap drones. Where are we on as far as being on the right side of that cost benefit when you look at the United States military right now? Are we on the right side of that, or on the wrong side of that push me pull you kind of equation?
Right. You phrased the question perfectly, Andy. We're on the right side when it comes to stated strategy. All the armed services are moving toward uncrewed, which is what they call them now, aerial systems to save lives. They're cheaper. They're very effective. The problem is a strategy without a budget is a fantasy. And the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, has put her name on a program called Replicator, which is to field drones as a deterrence to China. Just as you said, China has more missiles, more jets, and could really deny U.S. and allied access to the waters around Taiwan because the U.S. can't lose its big, expensive ships. Problem is, at this point, Andy, the Replicator program is envisioning about 10,000 drones. That's how many drones Ukraine loses every month in its war
Wow.
with Russia.
Wow. So in Ukraine, 10,000 drones are being lost every month, and the entire U.S. budget for defending Taiwan is to have 10,000 drones. That's a day's worth of drones. And oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the ones the U.S. is envisioning are, as always, bigger, more
Mhm.
complicated, better
Right.
ISR and all that. So each one of those 10,000 would have higher capability, but it just shows you if we really want to deter a Chinese invasion of Taiwan by putting too many targets in the sky for them to hit, we're probably going to have to put a lot more money into it. But the core of your question is there is traditional resistance. I mean, the Air Force likes its white scarf pilots, right? The Navy likes its big aircraft carriers. The Army likes its big vehicles. So all the services are putting some money into the drone effort, some brain calories, but to my mind, and I think yours, not enough because drones, as we've seen in the Ukraine-Russian war, drones are the future of warfare.
Yeah, and that's interesting because um, all of this is always evolving, and so we think of drones now as sort of and rightly as being sort of the future of warfare, I think. But what is the counter drone technology? What is the the defense that sort of move that sort of negates or changes the equation one more time? Is there anything on the horizon we should be looking at?
Right. If you unpack the Pentagon, the budget, there are all these very spooky programs. They sound like they've been culled from Marvel comic books. They're called Anvil and Shield and Thor, and some of them are kinetic. It's a bullet against a bullet. You shoot down the drone. A lot of them are electronic warfare. You scramble the guidance system. Some are microwave. You actually fry the internal pieces of that drone. So on the
Mhm.
battlefield, you can do that. But the problem here at home, Andy, if you're DHS or a local police department or even somebody protecting the inauguration, you start using some of these weapons, you're going to jeopardize commercial flight coming in to National Airport or Dulles. So the problem here at home, in a battlefield, the opposing parties own the space where they are. They can throw all kinds of horrible things up. Here at home, the authorities are not clear. If there's a drone going over the National Mall, let alone the White House, who has the authority to track it? Who has the
Mhm.
authority to shoot it down? And what weapons will they use? And that's here in Washington. I can't imagine the authorities being at all in place in my native Oklahoma City, for example.
Right, yeah. Hey, you're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm talking to Thom Shanker. He's a defense expert. We have him on every now and then to peer into the future a little bit, as well as tell us what's going on. Let's talk about Ukraine then for a second and drone technology in Ukraine. What are the sort of the major lessons from the Ukraine war when it comes to drone technology?
Sure, as we recall, when Putin invaded 2+ years ago, he thought he'd be in Kiev in the first week. The Ukrainians are a spirited, inspired, patriotic people, and they have a lot of advanced technology. They were putting cheap drones in the sky that were following the Russian tank columns, which were lined up in great Soviet fashion, marching in a row. And these very cheap drones were halting Russian armored columns costing millions of dollars. Well, the Russians are not foolish. They have great technology. So now it really is a drone and counter drone warfare. And Russia is sending drones not only to spot Ukrainian positions, but also to hit civilian infrastructure, power plants, sadly, hospitals and schools. So drones on both sides now are a cheap way to carry out a very effective war.
And I guess I just read this that the Russians now have accused the Ukrainians of using drones to fly over and to drop phosphorus, which would be a uh, violation of the chemical weapons ban. Any truth to that rumor? And we got about a minute here. I mean, what is the sort of nightmare scenario with the drone? Is it that drones can be used to sort of deliver weapons of mass destruction?
Right. The nightmare scenario, and I don't want to say it publicly, but it's already out there, would be a nefarious actor loading a hobby drone with phosphorus or anthrax or something like that, flying over a college or pro football event that isn't like the Super Bowl has all kinds of protection, the World
Right.
Series, but just a regular football game and dropping a poisonous powder over an American public site. That is my nightmare situation, Andy. And as of right now, the authorities and the tools are not in place to stop it.
Wow. Well, Tom, we're going to have to leave it there. I've been talking to Thom Shanker. I'm Andrew Walworth. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM, and that's our program for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Hope to see you then. Have a good evening.